In this video, we are going to continue talking about the money shadow and look at the underlying unconscious patterns and fears that we might have around financial security, and look at those so that they don't have to cause disruptions or cause more insecurity or cause more shame or whatever we might feel when it comes to money. I recently shared on my Instagram that part of the reason that I'm so interested and I care so much about doing the inner work within myself around money isn't just because I want to create my own sense of success for myself in a way that's meaningful to me, but it's also because my family lineage and the many women in my family experienced powerlessness around money. They stayed in situations that were not good for them in order to survive. And they felt that they didn't have choice. And it's become very clear to me in my lifetime that I'm here to not only heal what's been going on for me and myself in my life and the things that I've experienced that have caused insecurity around money, but also to heal my lineage, because the truth is these women also live within me still. What my family experienced, my ancestry still lives in me, and it gives me incredible meaning and inspiration to be able to heal that within myself, not only for myself, but for them as well. And as an extension of that, for my future, the future lineage that comes after me. And in this video, I want to share with you the 8 reasons or causes that might be causing some sense of financial insecurity or shame or unworthiness or powerlessness for you. Because the thing is, the more we look in the places that we might feel fear around, or we don't understand really, the more power we have. And it is through meeting that fear and with that awareness that we create power, because with awareness comes power, and with power comes the ability to choose. So let's get into the 8 places that we might want to look within that is causing us to feel insecurity and shame around money. And number 1 is this very common thing around scarcity or lack mindset. I say common because it is so typical within at least the coaching world and my field that we talk about scarcity mindset and lack mindset, and it's the feeling that we don't have enough, essentially. And while I truly believe that this is a really important place to look, it is important, because when we start looking at the filters that our mind operates from, for example, if we're looking at our bank accounts and we're feeling fearful or that there isn't enough, and we're constantly operating from that mindset that it's never enough, it's never going to be enough, then likely even when we make a lot of money or more money, we might still have that filter that we're operating from, that nothing is ever enough. And when we start looking at where that lack and where that scarcity feeling might come from, the more agency and power we have to shift that, to change that. And the truth is, I mean, I've mentioned this in a video before. I kind of talk about the ego and the infinite true self, right? And for me, it's really important to look at that the ego mind is limited. It sees limitations and separation, while the infinite true self is kind of the connection to the infinite loving universe, the eternal universe that's full of possibility and full of potential. And it isn't about just kind of living in the ego mind of looking at the limitations and kind of looking at what Usually we're more kind of externally oriented then. It's also incorporating and integrating and knowing that at our core, we have access to this true infinite self that is infinitely creative, just like the universe, and has the ability to tap into possibilities for ourselves and has the ability to be in true abundance in a sense. And I get it if that feels maybe a little bit woo-woo even, or what have you, but I just invite you to consider that we have our mindsets that are often set in ego and lack and scarcity, often depending on what we learned about, for example, money growing up. And we have to look at that and we have to integrate those things. We have to integrate the ego around that. And we have to be in tune to the infinite possibility that we can create anything. And we do have the possibility to create abundance in our life. And the more we can kind of operate primarily from that state of consciousness versus kind of the limiting self that sees scarcity and only sees separation, the more agency we have. And the more actually we're able to then work with the parts of ourselves that feel fear and scarcity and lack around things like money. And it can be around anything too, not just money. So the number one thing we want to look at is, where do we feel like we don't have enough? Like, do we kind of operate from a filter of not enoughness, or just seeing the negative or feeling the fear? And if we feel like most of our percentage of our consciousness kind of operates from that space, maybe especially when we're looking at our bank accounts, or we're doing business things, or we're looking at our taxes, or whatever it might be, then that's something to look at within ourselves and start taking care of the parts of ourselves, the parts of our ego, the parts of our inner world that might be believing certain things around money. Like, for example, the feeling that there isn't enough and there'll never be enough. And then start piecing back, where did I start learning this? When did I start learning this? What was it my family actually taught me about money? Because usually that sense of that filter will come from our family of origin. It will come from our culture. And if we're not conscious of, this is actually my state of consciousness a lot of the time, then that's what we're going to have repeated out to us. We are going to never feel like there is enough. We are going to continue feeling fear around money, and we are going to still have like a sense of, I can't have what I truly want and desire to have potentially. So that's number one. Number two, I want to bring it into practicality. Like, I can talk about the infinite self and the true self and stuff like that, and go kind of into spiritual realms with it, which is true and important, and we need that. We have to also recognize that we live in a physical reality, that we need to think in terms of practicality and pragmatism, in the sense that we have to, for example, when it comes to money, we have to look at the very real causes that might cause us to feel fear around it. For example, number two, which is financial literacy. Financial literacy is the learning of how to budget, how to invest, how to save, how to do taxes. What are the different systems that are involved in us that will help us take responsibility for our money and our bank accounts and our businesses, and the different operating things that are there, and how do we actually create a sense of, reoccurring earning and spending and investment and saving that leaves us in a sense of overflow, and that we're building and we're creating more, versus we're staying in, because we're not aware of financial literacy or how to do the things that I mentioned, then we'll stay in a constant state of cycles of lack and fear around money, and the kind of stuckness that very many people in society feel. Like, we feel powerless around money because we don't have the awareness or the lack of, or we don't have financial literacy, or we might have some of it, but we kind of could even know more and understand more in order to create more power and more the sense of agency around finances. And this again can be a really big source of fear for many. I know for myself, I definitely felt this. Like, I didn't learn about financial literacy growing up at all. I didn't even learn about it in college. And when I started my own business, I I still had so much fear and shame that came from feeling like I didn't know how to deal with money. I didn't know how to deal with like the nitty-gritty things around taxes. I felt like I was doing things wrong all the time. And it directly correlated with how I experienced not learning about money growing up, not knowing how to take responsibility for it. And it's with this thing, if we feel like we have fear because we don't understand or we just don't know, then that is an opportunity for so much compassion, because usually, almost always, it's not our fault. It is our responsibility, but it's not our fault that we feel inadequate around these different things, that we feel inadequate when it comes to taking care of our money, or we don't know how to make more or how to create more stability. It is so important to have compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, and even for those around us, because likely if we didn't learn it from people around us, because likely they didn't know either, right? And this is again where the power and the agency comes in of when we have awareness around these things, that is where we can choose different. So a book that really changed the way I looked at this was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I think that's his name. I'm pronouncing it correctly. It really shifted a lot for me. And from that space of reading that book, I started going in avenues of like, wow, there's so much more possibility here than I even realized. And when I can kind of understand and kind of work with and work through my fear around taxes, for example, that's when so many things started opening up for me, and the fear kind of dissipated more and more. This is not to say that fear and insecurity goes away 100%. It's just to say that we learn to have a different relationship with it, and it's not overwhelming us, so it makes us avoid or don't go into these spaces that we might need to go in order to create financial stability and freedom and a sense of safety when it comes to money and our own abilities with it as well. Number 3, we're talking about comparison to other people. This is such a big one for so many, because if we see people have a lot of success or they live kind of glamorous lives, like we see they do on social media very often, they have nice things and they have this lifestyle that looks really lavish and stuff, we might feel like our situation is so different from theirs that causes us to feel fear or shame around our own situation. And then that can cause us to not take care of the things or look at the things that we might need to look at in order to change our situation or to change our relationship with it. And this is something that I've really felt in my life as well, because I have several friends that are really successful and financially successful, and they've created these businesses and they live these lives that I'm aspiring to as well. And I used to before feel very less than when I was around them. I felt this underlying, like, even though we were connected on different points that, you know, didn't have anything to do with money or finances, I still had parts of myself that were comparing myself to them and their situation, which was causing me to feel more fear and more shame around my situation and where I was at in life. It caused me to feel lack of acceptance of where I was at. And acceptance is something you need to have for yourself if you want to transform anything. And it caused me to feel, like I said, shame and like a sense of like separation, like what they have and what they've accomplished, that isn't for me because it's just for them. And it felt this like sense of disconnect between me and them and their situation. And it's just something to be really noticeable and mindful within ourselves. Do we feel like we are comparing ourselves to other people, maybe that are working in the same business as we are, or working the same way, or have similar lives to us in some way, or we're comparing ourselves to family or to friends from school, whatever it might be? And what are we maybe subconsciously believing about ourselves, comparing ourselves to them? How are we believing that they're different? Are we even maybe judging them for what they have and what they have accomplished, which then also can maybe come from a sense of jealousy, actually. And maybe that jealousy is then blocking us from doing the things that we need to do and what we want to achieve here, because we have a subconscious judgment of those people. The truth is, the more we can acknowledge, like, okay, here I have a part of me that feels jealous. And actually that part of me feels jealous because it wishes it could do the same, then that will transform. That can be a really powerful thing to acknowledge and integrate the part of us that feels jealousy. To be like, that's fine. I see that there's a part of me that feels jealous here. That's okay. I can feel that. I can be with that part of myself, but that part of me doesn't have to kind of be sabotaging me when I am giving it space to be and giving it recognition, acknowledgement, and doing the work with it to let it know that it's actually, maybe it could be inspired by others rather than feel like there's a difference between us or that I have to judge them, because again, that's just hurting me in the long run versus anything else, right? And again, coming back to also the awareness that we don't have to, like, someone else's sense of success is theirs. It doesn't have to mean the same for us. My sense of success can be different than someone else's, and that's okay. And that's really important to pay attention to our own sense of truth within ourselves, what's important to us, what's true success to us personally. And that's something to journal on as well. What does success mean to me personally? And then operate from that sense of inner awareness and trust versus kind of externally orienting ourselves to what are other people determining what success is. And I should be the same as them, right? Keep coming back to ourselves and our own inner source of awareness. That is where we'll have the most power and most agency to make the changes that we want and to create the lives that truly resonate with who we are, right? Number 4 is the fear of the unknown. I get kind of excited talking about this because, again, I really resonate with this as well. We might actually be not fear, or like we might be avoiding looking at what the unknown is, for example, our future. And we might be scared of setting goals or setting intentions or even looking at like a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, or a 5-year plan. We might be scared of looking in the future because it's so unknown, and that can feel overwhelming, that we might then be living more kind of in the present moment, which is good. It's good to live in the present moment, but if we're living in the present moment of repeating the cycle of perhaps survival and maybe just living day to day or living month to month versus looking at how can I actually grow in the long term and what's actually the possibility for myself in the future? What could actually be possible for me? And what does that mean? And then, when we start looking at that, okay, I have this fear of there's a fear of the unknown, because maybe the unknown also could potentially mean the fear of failure. Like, what if I have these goals and intentions and set myself up for a really beautiful future that I'm aligning myself to, but what if I fail? That could also be part of the unknown that's then keeping us living kind of in the same patterns that we're living over and over again, right? So, and this can also mean, like, the fear of unknown can also mean that we're not looking within ourselves. Like, we're so scared of what we might find within ourselves, what we're believing, what emotions we might be having that we don't even realize are there, that it would feel really overwhelming to feel. These are things that are very common. Like, we both fear the unknown and the external and like the future, but then also the fearing the unknown of what's within ourselves. And the truth is, that's always so hopeful and so powerful, is that there really isn't anything to be fearful of than fear itself. I can't remember who said that. I saw, someone else mentioned it recently, where I think it was Roosevelt, the past president, that said that. And when we start recognizing that the only fear that we have is fear itself, perhaps, and that's when we can start building the capacity to be with fear and not be scared of fear itself. So it's not like this kind of this death cycle of being scared of fear, and then fear, right? So it's like building the resilience to, like, okay, I might meet some fear. I might meet some fear of failure in the future. Or I might meet, that's okay. How can I reframe that? How can I reframe failure? What about when I meet something within myself? Can I reframe what that means and what this emotion means about myself, right? And just being the courageous warrior that we are, and the hero that we actually are, a hero in, that we get to meet these fears within ourselves and externally. And those challenges are actually what helps us grow, moving through that fear and meeting it. Number 5 is cultural influence and family influence. The conditioning we have from society, and then also what we learned growing up in our families. And when we're pulling this into the conversation around money, we might feel or we might start questioning, what did I learn about money growing up? Did my family fear it? Did my family feel like there never was enough? Was money kind of put as this like bad thing, or this fearful thing that my parents felt a lot of stress around, and therefore I picked up that and I took that on? Or did I not learn much about money growing up? My parents or my family or school didn't teach me much, and therefore I just have this like maybe a little bit of a fearful relationship to it, because as we know, money is a big subject and it kind of rules a lot of the things that are going on in the world, and it's not always positive, right? And the more we kind of get to learn, by the way, money is neutral. I just want to say that it's not the fear of money itself that we have or judgment of it. It's usually the judgment we have of the people that handle the money, the people that have money and how they use it. And it's their intentions and the way that they are that we might have judgment or fear around, versus money itself, because money is just a neutral thing that we use to exchange and to give in order to survive. Yeah. So that's just like a little side note there. The thing that we want to pay attention to is looking at what we learned about money, and what did we learn to be in relationship with money. Did we feel anxious about it? Did we feel like we were avoidant around it? Or is that what we learned from our parents and our caregivers and from school? Was there talk about money? Was there not talk about money? And what were the conversations like? What was the sensation of the conversations like? Was there anxiety around it, or was there stress around it? When we start asking ourselves these questions, this will illuminate a lot, and we'll then start having like a better understanding and compassion for ourselves for how we might be experiencing money right now. I know for myself that I learned that money was scarce, and that my family was stressed about money and there never was enough. And also this feeling of inadequacy around handling money, that we, didn't really know how to handle it. And then later on, amazingly enough, my family experienced a lot of abundance. And so it was like went from scarcity to a lot. But there was so much underlying that hadn't been resolved, that it was still like a kind of a relationship around fear around it. And it's been such a big journey, and important one for me, to look at the underlying things that are going on here, the power dynamics, worthiness, fear, things that I actually mentioned in another video about money recently that you can go back and look at, where I talk about some of the biggest kind of underlying, the different things when it comes to like the different fears, again, that might come from money, or that might be causing money anxiety, where it's power, insecurity or security, and worthiness. That can be some big places to look when it comes to this. So again, coming back to where we might have learned, what we might have learned about money. Did we learn from our parents that people with a lot of money were bad? Did we learn from our parents that people who didn't have money, they were incapable, or they were bad in some way there? It's like either on one side or the other. So it's just very fascinating to go into that. We'll gain more awareness of ourselves, and we'll be able to meet these parts of ourselves that might still be holding on to beliefs about money that aren't necessarily true, right? Because the truth is, money is neutral, and it is possible to create a nourishing relationship with it. 6 is living in kind of a short-term gain awareness, where we're just taking the necessary things right here and right now, versus maybe looking at longer term important investments for us that could be important for a long term, versus we're just living in the here and now and kind of going into making choices that could be beneficial right here and right now to gain a little bit of money, but then we're not doing the investments that could be potentially really powerful and will give us a return in the long term, like investing in a coach, for example, or we're investing in a education around money, and investing not just money in it, but like time and energy as well. We're just kind of going, I just need to get through the next day. I just need to get through the next month, without kind of looking at the big picture. And instead of doing that, then we're staying in old cycles, then we're not breaking through old cycles and old patterns. So again, we're thinking about short-term gain versus long-term gain and long-term investment. Number 7 of these causes that might be causing unconscious fear, shame, or whatever it might be around money is the fear of loss and loss aversion, meaning we might have experienced things in our life like debt, or doing an investment and then it didn't work out the way we wanted to, and we weren't able to resolve it, and maybe we had a lot of emotions that were unprocessed with those situations. Maybe we were bankrupt, or a business didn't go the way that we wanted, or like I said, an investment that didn't go the way we wanted, and rather than kind of working through and resolving it because maybe we didn't have time, or we have to just keep going to the next thing, that made it so we didn't actually resolve those things in our nervous systems, in our minds, which then can cause us to have this underlying fear of loss. Like if we experience loss then of security, which doesn't even have to be around money. It could be around any type of loss of security, a home or a relationship, anything that might have made it so we unconsciously fear loss and fear what that might feel like in our bodies. And therefore, that fear of loss influences our taking care of the things that we might want to take care of, or look at the things that we might want to look at in order to create that sense of security and safety that we deep down inside want. So with that one, it's usually like at the core of it, and some of the core of most of this is actually fear of emotions and fear of meeting certain memories of the past and experiencing the same sensations in our bodies that we might be then trying to get away from through not taking care of the things we want. And like I've said all the way through, with awareness comes power, and with awareness of our emotions as well, the emotions that we might be subconsciously trying to get away from or avoid feeling, they are usually the ticket into the freedom and the security that we want through meeting the parts of ourselves that feel fear and to have experienced things that were maybe disempowering or they felt helpless around. That is where we are able to resolve and to work through the things that we need to work through. And this is again such a huge part of the work that I do with my clients. And it's not necessarily just around money, but it's about when it comes to health and when it comes to relationships and relationship with ourselves. First and foremost is like, how can we create more a sense of us feeling that powerful eternal self that I mentioned in the beginning, the part of us that is eternally loving and aware and powerful and creative, and to live more from that space and have that kind of as the background for the parts of us that feel more conditional or limited, the parts of us that feel fear, the parts of us that feel separation or that feel like something isn't possible, operating from that deeper sense of the connection to the universe and the infinite possibilities of the universe that's eternally loving and creative, letting that be the backdrop. And then everything else that shows up in our awareness through that, we're able to work through and resolve from that space and from that state of consciousness. And if we haven't experienced that much on your own, this is your reminder that you can, and that it is possible for anyone, and any kind of therapy will actually, or not any type of, but many therapies and consciousness studies will tell you this, and it's not just me saying it. When we tap into that eternal self with a capital S and live more our lives through that energy. I saw actually someone mentioning that the eternal self, or that energy I'm talking about, can be like a grandma, like a wise grandma that sees everything and has love for everything. And when we can operate from that state of being, that is where the possibilities open up, truly. And I really love that. I really resonated with that. That was number 7. And number 8 is personal values. And this draws me back to what I was starting with. I was talking about my experience with my lineage and my ancestry that didn't experience the power and the agency that they would have needed in order to create the financial freedom and the ability to create a life that was supportive to them. They are kind of my underlying why, right? It's both my values around being able to have respect for myself first and foremost, and respect for others around me. That's like a huge value, but underlying that is the deeper why and the bigger why of why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, why I feel so much meaning in helping others and helping others feel power and agency in their life, and freedom in the way that's meaningful to them, and peace in a way that's meaningful to them. That is my underlying why. And that ties into my personal values around that through my own ability to create my own meaning, I guess, or what is important to me, my healing my past and healing my ancestry, and also creating the support and the future that is important for the people that come after me. That is kind of the underlying thing. And then my values that stem from that: respect and inspiration and creativity and freedom and peace and love, and these different things, these values that when I can anchor into them and keep reminding myself of them, those are the things that will help me continue doing this work within myself and helping other people as well. And this is what I want to bring to you too, is this: when you have a sense of awareness of what your values are and what's important to you, what's your deeper why, that is what will also pull you forward, and creating awareness around that. If you don't have awareness around it, that's also what can keep you kind of stuck, because then we might be kind of in these fears. The fears we have around our future and money might be driving us, versus the deeper values that usually are a reflection of that deeper sense of infinite possibility and true self that all of us have access to and is unique to all of us as well. But yet it comes from the same source. So become aware of your personal values. They will drive you forward. How do they relate to the future that you want to create for yourself? Let those be your North Star and the underlying operating system that you're coming from, versus the fear. And having those things be the anchor on your true self, and meeting any fear or any parts of yourself, any beliefs that might come up from those values. So you meeting the fear, meeting the shame from the love or whatever is true for you and your experience, right? So I hope that this was helpful. If you'd love to connect with me on Instagram, I'd love to connect with you. You can find my information down below. You can also book a free consultation meet with me if you're curious about working one-to-one. I will put the link below to that. And if anything resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And with that, I just wish you so much love and freedom and strength and security on your path and wherever you're at.